Welcome to the Ending Sexploitation podcast, where we decode sexual harm and provide you with active solutions. I'm your host, Kaylee McNamara. Thank you all so much for joining us again. I'm here with Dani, Pinter, and we are thrilled to be joined by Melinda Tankard Reist, Movement Director at Collective Shout in Australia. She's been at the forefront of so many pressing global issues, from addressing objectification, pornography, sex trafficking, violence against women. I have just so long admired your advocacy, and it's not a surprise that you're working on your 8th book because you're such a clear communicator about these issues too. So thank you so much for joining us today.
It's a pleasure to be here with you, Hayley, and we really appreciate your support and allyship across the waves.
It's good to have allies around the world, although I feel really bad for you, Melinda, as you're, because of the time difference, joining us at 7 a.m. I hope you've had a chance to grab a cup of coffee at least.
It's okay, Hayley. As I said, I don't get out of bed for everyone, but you're very special, so we're okay about that.
Oh, you're very kind. Today we're talking about something that is a pretty wild topic that I think if people haven't been following, they might have be surprised by, which is a recent fight against the exploitive No Mercy video game, which gratefully has resulted in a really impressive victory. Before we dive into it, I do just want to add a quick note to our listeners who are listening that we are discussing some disturbing details of a video game that encourages sexual violence. So I recommend not listening to this where children are in earshot. And to dive in, I wanted to start off by quoting part of the No Mercy video game, which said, "Never take no for an answer." And this is a video game that encouraged gamers to use their avatars to sexually assault female characters. Melinda, just for those who haven't been following this, can you just walk us through what was this game and why it was so harmful?
No Mercy is a 3D rape and incest simulation game. It's a form of gamified pornography, really. And one of the particularly bad things about the gaming version of porn is that it's first player. You are enacting those scenes. You're carrying out the scenes you want to carry out. So you're choosing to rape your mother, your aunt, your sister, to punish the mother for her apparent infidelity, her unfaithfulness. And this is the way that you punish her, by engaging in rape and incest simulation. We don't believe that a game like this should exist, and that's why we launched our petition, our global campaign against the gaming giant Steam for hosting that game.
Yeah, and it really was just such a horrible story. I don't know, Dani, if you also were able to see what this game was all about, but just as Melinda said, the whole purpose of it, was to have, like you said, gamified rape to sexually abuse the other characters in the video game.
Yeah, I mean, I hadn't heard about this till I saw your campaign, Collective Shouts campaign, and
Mhm.
it was all over Twitter. I mean, it was a very effective campaign. And I mean, a couple observations. One was the photo that was, I guess, like the album cover of the game really encapsulates what you so eloquently said, like gamified porn. It was so clearly a porn themed image, which to me struck me in such a harmful way because the theme is rape and sexual violence, but obviously it's not depicting the reality of that. It's sexualizing that. It's kind of playing into those lies that this is just kind of a kink and a fantasy. And then the other question I had for you was I didn't realize how heavily incest was a theme. I mean, that's another layer to me of the harm, especially if I imagine children playing this game. So maybe you just tell me a
Mm.
little bit. I guess I didn't know how bad this game was.
Well, the Steam
Unfortunately.
platform, the No Mercy's description on the Steam platform itself says already a fan favorite in the non-safe for work game incest community. There is actually a game incest community. And one of the more disturbing aspects of our campaign is the number of male gamers justifying incest as fantasy, incest as fun. The number of gamers who openly said how much they enjoyed playing this game. They didn't think they'd be really into incest before, but then they realized how much fun it was to play this game. And then they said, oh, I guess I'm just a man after all,
Oh my
raping
god.
my raping my virtual mother and my virtual sister. So that was a very strong theme of the game. But I was saying to Haley before we got started, in Steam alone, there's 108 incest games and 214 rape games on that platform alone. And Steam isn't the only platform. We've discovered other platforms hosting sexual abuse against minor games. So our campaign will continue. But this is abhorrent content, first player abhorrent content where you play the role of a rapist and someone carrying out crimes of violence against your blood relatives, interfamilial family violence, which we know is a huge genre on porn sites.
Right.
So, all these things go together, they all intersect, and we are seeing rising crimes against children in families, rising crimes of incest. It's been taboo to even talk about it so long, so we don't even really know, the true figures. But the fact that incest could be presented as gaming entertainment is next level disturbing, isn't it?
It is,
Mm.
and that's what I was thinking of is the statistics on interfamiliar violence and just the reality that most or a very large percentage of perpetrators
Yes.
of sexual violence, particularly against children, are known, right? Known to the victim, family member. And I,
Right.
I think most people don't realize that, or don't recognize that, or maybe don't talk about it, like you said. So it's hard to imagine that things like this aren't playing into that in real life.
Well, we heard from survivors of sexual abuse and violence and incest who were also gamers. I put a call out on my Facebook, any gamers, any female gamers willing to talk to me. And in the end, I lost count, but I think it was 35 or 40 within a 24, 48-hour period that contacted me. And one of them was a survivor of incest at the hand of her brother. And her name was Justine, and she said, as someone who has gone through sexual abuse as a child at the hands of a family member, I find this game horrendous and dangerous and was sickened when I first read about it. It is heartbreaking that boys are learning to see sexual abuse and incest as just entertainment. It's triggering to all survivors, and we need to bear that in mind, how triggering a game like this is to female victims, female survivors. This is not some just sort of fantasy idea for them. This has happened to them in real life. Their real bodies were abused and violated. We heard from Ria, who said, I'm a survivor of multiple instances of sexual assault and abuse. As a gamer, I'm surviving sexual abuse, threats, and just plain female shaming all the time. There is such an embedded culture of misogynistic practices, abuse, belittling, and toxicity in the male gaming community. I'm terrified about what behavior that games like No Mercy will produce. Katrina said, as both a sexual assault survivor and female gamer, this makes me feel sick. Games like these only add to a growing problem and further isolate other female gamers. I'd like Steam to understand they are equally complicit in the content they distribute. To allow this type of digital abuse makes them equally a perpetrator and a pimp. I thought that was a
Mm.
brilliant line, perpetrator and a pimp. And so that's what some of the survivors shared with us, how the enactment of rape and assault in games was triggering to them. And bear in mind, the male gamer, the player, gets points for the number of rapes he commits, right? So
Wow.
you're getting rewarded for rape. Do we want boys to be rewarded
I
for
mean,
enacting rape on women and girls? Really? Look at the epidemic of violence against women in my country, in your country. And these games fuel this attitude of entitlement. I can do whatever I want. to women and girls. It plays out in the real world, and there's data, there's evidence to demonstrate that. You know, we're dealing with a crisis of epidemic proportions, and that was one of the reasons that fueled our distress and anger about this game. Even calling it a game sounds all wrong. Like
No,
rape, and it says game.
this is so shocking, and I can't help but think that how desensitizing this is for all of society. It makes me think of that
Right.
Andrea Dworkin quote, when your rape is entertainment, your worthlessness is complete. How is there ever
Absolutely.
going to be societal empathy for women and
Well,
girls of
that's my
sexual
biggest fear
abuse
Right.
for women.
when this is
Correct.
just a porn theme? When this is
Yeah.
entertainment?
Yeah.
Um,
And even beyond a porn theme into the level of video games, because I think it's important to think about the impact of this on the societal level. Like you said, having this be a form of mainstream entertainment, having rape be treated as a mainstream entertainment is has so many incredibly important effects. And I know sometimes people will say to us, well, at the National Center on Sexual Exploitation, we do civil litigation. We're working on things like public policy. Why would we be talking about a video game? But I think it goes to show the impacts of when sexual violence and abuse is normalized. It also encourages it. Like you said, Dani, it decreases empathy for survivors. And there's data about that, about how entertainment around sexual crimes can decrease empathy for the victims, even in court case settings. And how much does it normalize it for young people? The fact that there are points that you get for raping another person is so disturbing. And I wonder, Melinda, for your thoughts on this idea. I'm sure you guys have gotten the argument, well, it's just entertainment, it's just fantasy. Um,
Mhm.
how have you all responded to that claim?
Well, we're raising a generation of boys who believe they're entitled to do what they want to women and girls. I see it playing out in schools all the time. You know, Collective Shout and a parenting expert and author Maggie Dent just produced this report on sexual harassment of teachers. It's actually broader than that. It's really about the rise of sexual harassment in schools. I just presented at a global conference on porn as a driver of harmful sexual behaviours in schools. The teachers identified porn, they identified social media, they identified malign influences like Andrew Tate et al. As contributing to harmful sexual behaviours, peer on peer abuse at rates never before seen in Australia and globally, little kids acting out sexually on other children. So how does a rape and incest simulator with nothing to stop children accessing it, by the way, no proof of age protections at all.
of course not.
This is just one more contributing driver to this loss of empathy. Girls tell me every day boys threaten to rape them, send me nudes or I'll rape you. Boys touching, groping them, sexually groaning and moaning in front of them, simulating sex acts in the classroom, outside, in the schoolyard, on the school bus, unsolicited dick pics, threats of violence against girls. So schools have become hostile environments for many girls. It's contributing to a rise in absenteeism in school refusal. So this loss of empathy is a key point, and it's one of my biggest fears of all. And the fact that these men were joking about it, the fact that they were contacting us, making jokes about it, making incest memes, making rape memes and sending them to us. I was being sent images of real murdered women in pools of blood, right?
Ugh.
This loss of
I want to
empathy
highlight,
out of them.
and I want to highlight that
We're
because I
raising men
could.
who believe their sexual preferences take precedence over women's basic human rights. And as my colleague Caitlin Roper wrote, men who defend violence against women because it gives them an erection are not qualified to weigh in on what is and is not harmful to women and girls. Go ahead, Denise.
Mm.
No, I just wanted to highlight so that our audience parses out what you're describing there, that you were sent. Can you just expound that again? Because you did this great campaign, which I do want to highlight. the
Mhm.
Yeah.
effectiveness
We won the campaign.
of
We
the
need to give you
campaign.
good news. You
Exactly.
won.
And
The story with hope.
I want to talk about that, but I do want to just
Yes.
draw attention to what you're saying, which is that when you called out this obviously disturbing game that
Yes.
you all received harassment. Can you just tell us about that again? I'm sorry I interrupted. I just want to make sure that
No,
people
you're
understood
right.
that.
Mm.
Oh, of course. Look, this is just normal. We've been abused for 15 years. We've had rape threats and death threats. We've had to call the police in the past. So, this doesn't take us by surprise, sadly, but it does show where we are going. It does show how low we have sunk as a society. So we got multiple threats. You should be put to death for promoting censorship, you Puritan freak. I hope one day I have the opportunity to rid you from this planet. I hate you. Look, the way that we've always looked at this is that if we weren't having an effect, they wouldn't bother, right? So it's the fact that they're so triggered by our campaign against an incest and rape simulation game. It tells you more about them than it does about us, right? But the fact is we have to live amongst these people. They'll say if you don't like the game, don't play it. We have to live in a
Mm.
world with you. We have to live in a
Mhm.
world with men who think it's appropriate to play games, not just rape and incest simulation games, as if that's not bad enough. But now we've found a whole trove of games in which you actually abuse a child. You actually first player games where you abuse minors, deliberately abuse minors. And there's many of these games hosted on other platforms. Even Steam rejected some of these
Mm.
games.
Mhm.
So, we have to live here too. And a pornified
Mhm.
world harms all of us, harms every woman and every girl. Every woman and every girl feels besieged, under threat. Girls don't feel safe. And there's global data on this. Girls do not feel safe anywhere. The levels of sexual harassment, the levels of sexual assault, of daily sexual intimidation, sexual bullying. Sexual bullying in schools is huge, of female students and female teachers. And games like No Mercy contribute to that because they sever boys from their humanity. They sever
Mm.
boys from the kindness, the sweetness, the softness that they're born with. Those of us that have given birth to sons know that they're not normally and naturally cruel and vicious and harsh and want to rape women and children, right? This is learned
Mm.
socialized behavior. Education doesn't just happen in the classroom. Education happens in the whole culture around our children. And cultures that normalize and allow incest, rape games, child abuse themed games are harmful to all of us as a society, as a civilization. So they don't get a free pass just because we don't play the game. We still have to live in the world that gamified porn creates.
And I feel like the threats prove your point. Like
Yes.
Right? Exhibit
You're saying it
A.
oh, this
doesn't impact their behavior, and then they
Honestly,
continue that way.
and then they send rape
you can't make
threats.
it up. It's when we ran a campaign
Truly.
years ago against. It's like years ago we ran a campaign against Tyler, the creator, and we were trying to get his tour stopped in Australia. Eventually, we succeeded in getting his visa cancelled in 5 countries. But I'll never forget getting a threat that said, "How dare you say Tyler, the creator's lyrics contribute to violence against women? I'm going to rape you, murder you, chop your body up into small pieces, and burn your body with chemicals, and no one will ever be able to find you." Like
It's
you just can't make it up. Right?
Can't make
you
that up.
really
You can't make
you
that
really
up.
So
can't.
we point to those threats as Exhibit A. You've proved our point.
Exactly. You've proved the
Mhm.
point. And I also just can't help but wonder if some of those are children, minor age boys sending those threats and the effect on their own souls, on their own person acting that way. I mean, I think it's so powerful that the point you made that this is this is severing boys from their humanity. This is
Mhm.
harming them as well, and then harming society because we all have to live in this atmosphere and nobody wants to. And it's
That's
dangerous, truly dangerous. But let's talk about this unbelievable campaign and how effective it was.
Mm.
Haley, kick us off.
Yes. No, I just want to hear from you, Melinda, because so Collective Shout, I would love for you to share just a bit about what your organization does and then how this campaign got started. The
Mhm,
momentum that you
mhm,
garnered has been incredible. And I think as a element of scale too, for people who aren't familiar, what you were calling for was for this game to be removed from Steam. And just as a bit of a FYI, since I don't know how many of our listeners are gamers, Steam is
mm,
a popular gaming platform. They have
mhm,
over 90 million active users. It's a place where people buy, download, play games of all kinds. But it's, as a matter of scale, over 90 million active users.
mm,
Approximately 35 million of those users are minors. So this
mm.
is a huge platform. Even if you yourself haven't heard of it before or used it, so many people around the world are using it. So, but Melinda, I would love to hear the campaign, how it got started, and just tell us the story of your victory,
I'd
because
love
this
to.
is a
I'd love
story that
to.
has a lot of hope.
Yes. Well, Collective Shark for a World Free of Sexploitation is 15 years old. We're a grassroots campaigning movement. We're like a rapid response, hit squad. We move into action as fast as we possibly can. And we were alerted to this game. We looked into it and we thought, let's run a campaign. And it developed very, very quickly. So the first thing we did was on a Sunday. On a Sunday, my colleague Caitlin Roper put in a complaint to our Australian Classification Board about the game. On the Monday, we decided to launch the campaign anyway because we don't know when we would get the ruling, and we felt the game warranted a campaign kind of regardless of the Australian status. This is a global, game. The internet has no borders. So we launched our campaign on Monday and we encouraged our supporters to email the CEO of Valve, the parent company of Steam, and 3,000 of our supporters leapt into gear. We made it quite easy for them with a button that would send their emails directly. Then on the Tuesday, we got a ruling from our classification board, which seemed quite fast. And the board determined that the game was banned in Australia. It was illegal to play the game in Australia, not because of the content, because they'd never gone through our classification system. They tried to get around our censors. They tried to get around our regulators by not, the developers, Xerat Games, did not submit the game for classification. So it was a technicality, but it worked in our favor. It was illegal to sell the game in Australia. After that, we launched our global petition and we rapidly got signatures. We were supported by change.org with this campaign, and that helped. So they pushed that out through their networks. Bear in mind, we had just had a massive, successful campaign to get Andrew Tate's pimping, trafficking courses off Spotify and then SoundCloud. That was successful. That was the biggest petition that we've ever run. And so this came off the back of that. So I think change.org was quite well disposed towards us. So we launched our global petition. The signatures rose very quickly, and three things happened in rapid succession. And that was that the game got removed from Canada, then the UK. That was huge when the developers pulled the game in the UK. We haven't been able to establish if the game was pulled as a result of an instruction from Ofcom, because we did have government officials speaking out against the game, or if the gaming developers decided to pull it and avoid the pain. We suspect
Mm.
the latter. Um, but it was great to have some UK officials speaking out against the game. And then US as well, the game got pulled in the US. Again, we don't think it was because of any regulatory powers, unfortunately, but we do think that the developer saw what was going on and decided to avoid further pain there. And then after that, it wasn't available anywhere. You couldn't get it
Mm.
anywhere. And a notification on Steam said this game is no longer available on this platform. So then we declared victory at
Incredible.
70,000 signatures after the
Wow.
game was pulled in those countries. So that all took space from, between, I think it was a Sunday and a Friday. That's
What a
that's all.
week.
I mean, that's
Wow.
the
Oh my
power of collective
gosh.
action, right? That's the power
That's right.
of a well-run targeted campaign, and it does show that people still care. So we do need to take
That's right.
heart in, we're not so debased yet. People still care. Sexual violence inflicted on mothers and children, fortunately, still still has an effect on people who still have a conscience, right? Still have a sense of justice. So we were delighted with the rapid signature collection, and we officially announced victory on the Friday, and updated the petition on the Saturday with the victory announcement.
Man,
Congratulations.
congratulations, congratulations. It's just incredible how rapid the response was, obviously through really effective campaigning on your end. It was also fascinating to see throughout the week as different countries started pulling the game down. And it
Yes,
is crazy as someone in the United States to realize that there isn't really any enforcement authority over video games in America. Our FCC doesn't regulate them. They
yeah.
really self-regulate as an industry through the
Self-regulation. Look at how
ESRB.
that's worked. Yeah, what a joke.
Yes. And so
This
it's
has really
very
highlighted
frustrating.
the lack of
Mhm.
regulation. Yes. Why have these why have these porn gaming platforms gotten away with this for so long? Why don't they come under current regulatory bodies? Our regulators lack teeth, and you have a particular problem there, particular problem which
Mhm.
affects all of us with free speech, because free speech protection should not apply to porn, rape, and incest simulation games, child abuse games. Why is free speech is applied far too broadly? And I'm sure, that the framers of the American Constitution weren't planning on protecting rape and incest and child abuse
No.
simulation games, right?
No.
Just saying, like, I'm speculating, but
Well, you don't
so
really
I don't.
have to speculate. I mean, because obscenity is, because you're just right about that. You're just right about
Yeah,
it.
yeah,
I am glad we have free speech. I'm a proponent of free speech, but I believe that free speech is best served by being true to what it means under our Constitution. The First Amendment
yes,
does not protect obscenity. People have forgotten that in this country, but technically obscene content has zero free speech protection. But so I think what you're zeroing in there is a lack of
mhm,
will, because
Mhm.
what is obscene is a judgment call, and it's a painful process, because what you experienced is what any government body would experience if they tried to enforce this, right? Because they could. Questions about why isn't there a regulatory body? I think that is interesting to me, and maybe that's a place where we could get somewhere, right? Because we have technically regulatory bodies that govern other modes of entertainment, which are
mhm,
obviously protected by free speech. So why not the gaming community? But
mhm,
definitely, it would be a the whoever it was, whether it was a criminal enforcement body or regulatory body, to go after it. They'd have to allege it was obscene, I would imagine, which I think this is. The test is, unfortunately, we're dealing with like a test from the 70s, the Miller test, which is lacks all literary artistic value, that kind of thing. I don't think it would be hard to get a group of peers in any jurisdiction in this country to agree that that rape game lacks any value and would be obscene. But you'd have to go through that whole process, and you'd endure the political backlash, and you'd see the free speech absolutists coming out of the woodwork to advocate for it. And so I think it's just a lack of will, it's a lack of courage is the answer.
Mm.
Language is unfortunate because it is a bit of a value judgment, language around, obscenity. Like, we'd rather see it situated as harmful content that is harmful content that normalizes violence against women and children. The language is a bit it'd be problematic and a bit hard to argue,
Exactly. Hard to apply and
Mhm.
yeah.
hard to apply. Yes, but right now our campaign is going to continue. So we've discovered a large number of games promoting sexual violence against minors, and we have discovered this on a platform. And guess who processes the payments and is profiting from this? PayPal. PayPal.
Mm.
PayPal.
Why are you allowing and profiting from facilitating transactions for games that promote violence against women, children, infants? I'd really like to put that question to PayPal today. Why are you
Absolutely.
allowing it?
PayPal.
$10 to play rape and incest simulation games, child abuse games. This is the first time you're hearing it here. We are going to go after PayPal for allowing transactions and profiting from the simulated rape and abuse of women and children.
Mhm.
Well, we support you. What action can we uplift through our networks? Are you doing petition, a letter? What can we activate?
Literally, this is just being discussed as we speak. So what we're looking at, probably not another petition. We don't want to give people petition fatigue. We've just had two massive ones in a row. We are going to go direct to PayPal, and I think we'll set up like an email system. We will
Yeah.
go after them on our social media platforms. So feel free to share, to retweet,
Mhm.
to send your own emails. You know, you carry a lot of authority there at NCOSY. You carry a lot of weight, and your weight there, particularly in the US, would really help. So we're currently putting together the names of PayPal executives, and we're going to get their names out on every platform, on all of our platforms, and their faces, and tell people what PayPal is enabling and facilitating child sexual abuse. One of the most egregious crimes, imaginable. Why would a legitimate, financial services processing corporate like PayPal want to be part of that?
Mhm.
Exactly. And I don't think they
Yeah.
will. I don't think they will. And I think this is so important. And I'm really happy you're doing this.
Yes, I'm so grateful for all of the work that you guys are doing. I think as we're kind of wrapping up our time together for this episode, although as we were talking about before we started recording, we have many more episodes to come to talk about different campaigns going on. Um,
Mm-hmm.
I would love to just end on the note of, we've seen this was a terrible, terrible game, harmful in many ways to boys and girls, to society at large. Victory did happen. It was pulled down. Significant numbers of people signed petitions, sent emails, spoke out. As you were saying, even on TikTok, in the gaming community, some people were starting to speak out about this. And there is still more to do. Terribly, there is still more to do, but I am so heartened that while there are people who are in this community who are defending it, so many are standing against it. So I would just love, Melinda, for you to maybe leave us off with a message of hope about what can happen in the future.
Yes. Well, collective action works. Last year, we had our record year at Collective Shout, 34 victories in 1 year.
Wow.
Some of our victories have been against billion-dollar, trillion-dollar corporations. For example, we got child sex abuse dolls down off 5 or 6 of the largest e-commerce platforms in the world, such as Alibaba, such as Made in China, um, also as well here in Australia off Etsy. Collective action really does work. If you want to be encouraged, read about our wins from last year, 34 victories, because people decided to care. People decided to get involved rather than complaining and saying, why doesn't someone do something about that? They decided to be that person and to fight for social change and cultural transformation. We all have to live here. We're trying to raise kids in this society. It's becoming sick. It's becoming toxic. Porn has done that. This is the world porn has made. which is why we support global campaigns to bring down Pornhub, for example. Why in Australia we have fought so hard for an age verification trial, which, by the way, the porn industry is trying to disrupt. The porn industry is trying to disrupt any regulation of its industry, as you've seen in the US, as is happening right now in the UK. Pornhub officials going to the UK to try to undermine regulatory processes there. So we do have to keep fighting, but collective action does work. And, our governments have often failed us, our regulatory bodies have failed us. So the people have to stand up and engage in civil action and disrupt the toxic, harmful messages from porn culture, rape culture, as reflected in this game. So we can get involved and make a difference. And we'd love your listeners to support us, collectiveshout.org. It's free to sign up. And we want to expand our campaigns and have a stronger presence, around the world, and equip you to fight what's wrong in your own societies. And again, we so value the support and allyship of NCOSY and our other global partners. So thanks for this opportunity to address all of your supporters today.
Yes, thank you so much,
Absolutely.
Melinda. Thank you. Thank you, Collective Shout. We're going to link to your website and any actions that are forthcoming related in the show notes for our
Yep.
listeners to stay connected, follow your work. I encourage them to do so. And so just a great reminder today that while exploitation can be normalized online, it's up to us to speak up about it and to create change. So thank you so much. And to our listeners, thank you for following along. Please share this episode with a friend, give us a 5-star rating, and thank you for joining us in Ending Sexploitation.